What's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Bestechman Crocodile Dundee. Now the Crocodile version of this knife is an exclusive available only through Going Gear for $99.95. However, the standard version of the Dundee is available at other retailers for around $45, and I'll link to both options down in the description of the video if you're interested in checking this one out. Now what makes the Going Gear exclusive version exclusive is that crocodile pattern on our G10 scales, which is where it gets its name obviously. The standard version is just the Dundee, but also we get a pretty big upgrade in steel. And so where the standard Dundee has D2 steel, the Going Gear version has M-Cut, and that's where a lot of that price difference comes from. If you're not familiar with M-Cut, it's sort of a wink wink, nudge nudge, gray market Magnacut, which I guess kind of sounds like it's some other company manufacturing Magnacut with their own with the same properties. But in reality, this is actually Crucible Magnacut. They're just not allowed to call it that. So basically, Crucible does not sell Magnacut to non-US companies. It'll only ship in the United States. So what happened was another company ended up buying it directly from Crucible and then selling it to Bestechman and shipping it out to them, where they manufacture these in China. And so they're not technically allowed to call it Magnacut, even though this is Crucible Magnacut. So that's kind of the workaround to get around that. But you are getting Magnacut at a really, really great price, $99.95 for this one. And that's one of the reasons I'm pushing this video out a little bit earlier than I had initially planned, is they're starting to get low in stock on this exclusive version. I think you have plenty of time if you want the standard version, but only a handful of these ones left, and so wanted to get it out while it was still at least available. Now the knife itself is an O-Stop Hell design. We've been taking a look at quite a few of his designs on the channel recently. Going Gear seems to have a great relationship with him where they send out a lot of his knives in that subscription, so I've gotten a lot of them through there. And it's kind of a longer design at 8.07 inches, although it doesn't feel particularly large, and I think that's because it's so slim or narrow in the handle. So you've got that kind of slim build that doesn't feel overly large, but you're still getting plenty of cutting edge there, a decent sized blade at 3.35 inches, and then a very generous handle at 4.73 inches. Now that allows me for the full 4-finger grip and really solid ergos on here. Overall, no hot spots. It feels great in my hand. The one point I would note is that I wish the finger groove had a smoother, just kind of more gradual transition. I think I mentioned that in a couple of knife videos recently with finger grooves, and that's because my middle finger actually lands on this one. You can see it's a little bit longer where it's much wider than my index finger, but it's so wide that my middle finger ends up sitting on there if I have that tight grip. If I spread out a little bit, I can skip it, so it's really not that big a deal, but I do think it would be even more comfortable if it just kind of got knocked back a little bit and you didn't have that point to contend with. And so otherwise, really, really solid ergo, so nothing to complain about there. We also have a generous bit of jimping on the spine of the knife, a little bit over an inch of jimping, and the jimping is not super aggressive. It's grabby enough. I would prefer it be a little bit more aggressive, but I think it's probably aggressive enough for most people. They're going to be pretty happy with that. You're not sliding around. Really allows you to lock in that grip pretty tightly, and your thumb doesn't slide around too much on it, so very effective jimping overall. Already mentioned 3.35 inches on that blade. Really, really subtle clip point style blade. I think a really nice looking blade, pairs nicely with the handle, and we got a nice wedge on that clip point. We also have a fuller here that really isn't doing much in terms of deployment. So we have a liner lock here, nice access to that, and then liners are very nested in the handles, which is saving a little bit on weight. This is pretty lightweight at 3.24 ounces, and I think just looks better with those nested liners. But I mentioned that fuller, and so you do have access to it with that cutout on either side. I'm not able to get enough purchase with my middle finger or my thumb to deploy it. I think part of that is also that it has a pretty heavy detent, and so if I had a little bit lighter detent, I might be able to middle finger flick that or flick that out with my thumb, but as is, I'm not able to get enough purchase to get the force I need to break through that detent. And so one nice thing about that heavy detent though is that leaves our only deployment method as this flipper tab, and I like a heavy detent on a flipper tab. It gives you that nice snappy action. And this one is super snappy, ultra smooth. I believe it is on bearings. Yeah, it looks like it is on bearings, and it is ultra smooth, so it just kind of drops down to your nail. You can shake it the rest of the way. You can also sort of time it where you get out of the way in time, but usually it's just going to hit the top of your thumbnail anyway. So really nice, fun, fidgety action on there, and that flipper tab works great. I think it also does a pretty good job of staying out of the way. It's not too much of an eyesore, and it sits right underneath that pivot, where with this handle you have enough real estate where I'm not so worried worried about that extra 1/4 of an inch moving forward. I still would prefer some other deployment method, but overall I think this one's pretty well implemented. Again, Magnacut on the steel, nice flat grind on there. We do have that fuller, but not really able to use that for deployment, and ultra smooth drop shut action. We have G10 scales. This one obviously has that crocodile print, which does add a little bit of grippiness to it. With the standard version, there's even a green version, it's just going to have a flat G10, which is still relatively grippy, but I do think that adds a little bit overall to the ergos of the knife and just the overall gripability of the knife. Nice deep carry pocket clip, pretty standard stuff, nothing too exciting, but it works well, slides in and out of the pocket. This one does have that texturing that doesn't stop under the pocket clip, so maybe over the long term that might kind of destroy the pockets of your jean a little bit more than the flat version, but not super obtrusive either. It is also reversible, so right or left hand tip up carry. No plug in that opening, and it's kind of a weird placement also, since the knife kind of doesn't end in a flat spot, and so they have this random box here. It's not too noticeable on this version. I think it's probably a little bit more noticeable on that flat version that doesn't have the texturing, but overall it's not that big a deal at a knife at this price point, and it's nice that it is again reversible. We have the double stop pins back here, so no lanyard hole. You probably can add one, just wrap it around this stop pin, or you can thread it through the opening in the pocket clip if you really want one. I don't know that this one particularly needs it, but if you are someone who likes adding that lanyard and bead to it, you do get that option there. Otherwise, I think really solid design. I really like this Crocodile Dundee version. I think I've mentioned before in other videos, I just like a little bit of extra on G10, which I've grown pretty bored of the plainer G10. So anytime I can get some texturing or patterns on it, I'm pretty excited about that. Even layered G10, where you get a little bit of shadowing through the different texture as well, I think looks super cool. But I think they did a really great job on this design. I'm a really big fan of it. Hope you enjoyed it as well. Let me know what you think of this knife down in the comments below. As usual, if you enjoyed the video, consider liking, commenting, subscribing, checking out some of my other content. All helps the channel out a ton, and I hope you have a great one. Take care.